What if the man everyone else threw away was the only one a strong woman rancher had ever truly needed? The letter arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, sealed with a wax stamp carrying the Whitlock family crest. Margaret Doyle read every word twice, her eyes narrowing with unease. She had asked for a husband. They were sending their son Nathaniel, yet the letter spoke of him like a tool, not a man. Useful, practical, steady. There was no affection, no pride, no warmth. It sounded almost like a warning. She set the letter on her heavy pine desk and stood, staring out the window at the long, dusty road that cut through her ranch. In 2 days, Nathaniel Whitlock would arrive, the man she had requested, the man his own family seemed eager to get rid of. Margaret tried to steady her breathing, but something cold slid into her chest. She had expected nerves. She had not expected dread. What she didn't know was that miles away at the Whitlock homestead, Nathaniel was quietly folding what little he owned. His sisters laughed in another room, their voices light, uncaring. His mother's relief hung in the air like a bad smell. His father called it perfect justice. They had chosen him without hesitation. They wanted him gone. Nathaniel said nothing. He had learned long ago that surviving in his family meant silence. The next morning, Margaret cleaned her home with a focus she almost didn't recognize in herself. She swept the floors, polished the table, and set fresh linens in the spare bedroom. She placed wildflowers in a chipped vase beside the bed. As she caught her reflection in the mirror, she brushed back a strand of auburn hair and studied her own face. 30 years old, strong, capable. Owner of one of the largest ranches in the county. A woman neighbors respected, though many doubted her. She had built everything from the ground up, but the work came with a cost. Silence filled the evenings. Loneliness pressed against her like a weight she could no longer ignore. Her thoughts drifted back to a memory from years earlier at Peterson's trading post. She had seen the Whitlocks there. His sisters laughed and bartered, dressed in fine clothes. But Nathaniel had crouched beside a stray dog, caught in a steel trap. While his family mocked him for dirtying his clothes, he tore strips from his own shirt to bind the dog's bloody paw. He had spoken to the frightened animal in a calm voice, gentle and patient, until it stopped shaking. Margaret had watched from a distance, struck by the kindness in his face. She never forgot that moment. Now, with his family's cold letter in her hands, she realized it must be him they were sending. At the Whitlock home, the decision was made like a business deal. Edward Whitlock stared at Margaret's letter, as if studying a contract. His wife's eyes were bright with relief. Their daughters whispered sharp jokes. "Perfect," one said. "Send him far away, let him be someone else's trouble." Nathaniel heard every cruel word. They called him a burden, a shame, a problem. He stood pressed against the wall outside the kitchen, letting the words pierce him, but he made no sound. Instead, he went to the dim room where his grandmother lay weak in bed. He held her frail hand and whispered the truth. He was being sent away because he refused to stay quiet about his father's dishonest dealings. His grandmother squeezed his hand ever so faintly, giving him the only comfort he had. By Thursday morning, his trunk was packed. His family gathered on the porch, their smiles brittle. No hugs, no tears, no true goodbye. He climbed into the wagon and did not look back. The journey carried him across rolling fields and golden hills. He watched the countryside, trying to push away the sting of his family's relief at his leaving. He wondered who Margaret Doyle truly was. He remembered the way she had looked at him years ago, when no one else ever had, with quiet recognition. The sun was sinking when the wagon rolled into the lane that led to Twin Oaks Ranch. The house stood strong against the bright sky, solid and warm, its porch wide, its windows glowing. Before the wagon stopped, Margaret stepped outside. Her stride was sure. Her green eyes sharp but kind. Her auburn hair caught the last light of the day. "Mr. Whitlock," she said, extending her hand. Nathaniel stepped down and shook it. For a moment, the world grew very still. Her hand was warm, her gaze steady. Something passed between them, a spark neither could name. Inside the house, the fire crackled softly. Shelves lined with books filled the walls. The furniture was sturdy, built for work, not display. It felt like a home shaped by a real life, not by pride. Margaret set his trunk down and offered him supper, stew and bread. They ate quietly, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. She watched him with interest, not judgment. He felt the difference immediately. At last she spoke. "Your family spoke highly of you." Nathaniel gave a dry smile. "Did they?" She admitted they hadn't said much. His father had agreed quickly. His mother called him practical. "Practical," Nathaniel repeated, their polite way of saying unremarkable. "I don't think so," Margaret said. "I saw you once years ago at Peterson's post. You helped a wounded dog while your family mocked you. That wasn't unremarkable." His face warmed with surprise. "You remember that?" She nodded. "I remember thinking any man who would tear his own shirt to save a hurt animal is a man worth knowing." For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt seen. "Why choose me?" he asked quietly. Margaret leaned back. "Because I need someone real. A partner who sees the world clearly. When I remembered you from that day, I hoped you might be that man." Nathaniel held her gaze, and for the first time, hope flickered inside him like a new flame. He had been thrown away by his family, but here, with her steady eyes on his, he wondered if he might finally become someone who mattered. What if the man a family tossed aside became the one person a strong woman rancher could finally trust with everything she had? The morning light filtered pale and soft through the small window of the spare bedroom. Nathaniel woke slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. For the first time in years, he had slept without tension in his shoulders. No sharp voices, no footsteps waiting to judge him, only the quiet sound of cattle in the distance, and the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. He rose, dressed quickly, and stepped into the main room. Margaret stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back, moving with calm confidence. She glanced over her shoulder and in one smooth motion handed him a cup of hot coffee. "Morning," she said. "Thank you," he replied, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "You're up early," he added. "Ranch work doesn't wait," she said, cracking eggs into a pan. "But I don't expect you to keep my hours yet." Nathaniel leaned against the doorway, watching her cook. She looked different in the morning light, less guarded, more human, strong but soft at the edges. She was a woman who had learned to rely on herself, but wasn't afraid to let someone close if they proved worthy. "What do you hope to gain from this arrangement?" he asked carefully, honestly. She turned, meeting his eyes. "It's Margaret," she corrected. "And what I want is simple. I built this ranch with my own hands, but people look harder at a woman alone. A partner brings stability. But I didn't want a man who poses or brags or lies. I wanted someone with sense, someone with heart." She paused, studying him. "And when I remembered you at Peterson's post, I thought maybe that someone was you." Nathaniel's throat tightened. She had no idea what those words meant to a man who had never been wanted for anything other than to be silent. They ate breakfast quietly. Afterward, she led him outside. The crisp morning air smelled of hay, wood smoke, and damp earth. They walked side by side as she showed him the barns, the chicken coops, the large pasture where cattle grazed. "It's bigger than I expected," he said. 5 years of stubborn work," she replied. "I started with nothing but land and 2 horses. Everything else came one step at a time." Her pride was quiet, not boastful. Nathaniel admired that. She was a woman who built her world with her own hands. At the far fence line she stopped, resting her arms on the top rail. The cattle moved like slow shadows across the field. Nathaniel joined her, feeling the weight of open land settle over him. Out here, the air was different, clean, honest. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. Of course. I didn't choose your family randomly. Her gaze stayed steady. 3 years ago, after I saw you at the trading post, I asked questions. I learned your father's dealings aren't always honest. But you were different. Nathaniel stiffened. You spoke up, she went on, even when it cost you. So that's why you chose me, he said quietly. You wanted information. That's what I thought I wanted, she shook her head slowly. But now that you're here, I think I was wrong. Her voice softened. She lifted her hand and lightly touched his cheek. The touch was gentle, unexpected. Nathaniel froze, breath caught in his throat. No one had touched him with kindness in years. Somewhere between yesterday and this morning, she whispered, I stopped caring about your father's business and started caring about you. The world around them seemed to still. The cattle, the wind, everything faded. And who do you think I am when no one is watching? He asked, barely breathing. I think you're a man who stands for what's right, she said. A man with honesty and heart. Quote. He swallowed, his voice shaking. What happens now? We decide if we want this to be real. He didn't answer in words. Instead, he stepped closer and she rose slightly on her toes. Their lips met in a soft, certain kiss. Warmth flowed through him like he had stepped into sunlight after years in the dark. When they pulled apart, their foreheads touched. Later that morning, Margaret handed him gloves and asked if he'd like to learn the daily work. He followed her through the chores, feeding horses, hauling water, mending a fence line. He was no stranger to hard work, but it felt different beside her. There was no anger, no punishment, only shared effort. Nights were quiet. They sat by the fire, talking softly. Margaret told stories of building the ranch from nothing. Nathaniel told her pieces of his past, careful but honest. She listened without judgment. But one evening, as rain tapped against the window, Margaret asked quietly, Why did your family send you so quickly? Nathaniel stared into the flames. Because I was easier to send away than silence, he said. I saw things they didn't want seen. I spoke truths they didn't want spoken. To them, I was not a son. I was an inconvenience. She reached across the table and covered his hand. You are not an inconvenience here. The words struck him like a promise. Weeks passed. Their bond deepened. They moved easily around each other, worked in rhythm, shared soft glances across the table. When a traveling preacher came through town, they exchanged simple vows. No family, no celebration, only certainty. Nathaniel's family sent no word, but he did not care. He belonged here now. For a time, life was peaceful, filled with work, quiet evenings, and the slow, warm settling of trust. Until one cold Sunday morning when they rode into town for supplies, and everything changed. Inside the general store, a voice froze Nathaniel where he stood. Well, if it isn't our wayward brother. He turned to see Victoria and Isabel standing inside the doorway, their clothes fine, their smiles sharp as knives. What are you two doing here? Nathaniel asked, the dread settling deep. Visiting, Victoria said sweetly. We simply wanted to see how our brother is adjusting. Their cold gazes slid toward Margaret. The sisters stepped closer. Be careful, Victoria murmured. Father has friends in powerful places, friends who know how to take what they want. Margaret's jaw tightened. And Nathaniel knew this was only the beginning. What if the family that threw him away came back not just to shame him, but to destroy the only place that ever gave him worth? The moment Margaret and Nathaniel left the general store, both knew trouble was coming. Victoria and Isabel had not come just to mock. Their warning carried something colder, something planned. Margaret guided her horse beside his as they rode home, her jaw tight, her eyes sharp. What did they mean by friends in powerful places? She asked. Nathaniel's hands tightened on the reins. My father knows land agents, lawyers, surveyors, men who twist laws for a fee. If he wants this ranch, he'll try to take it without lifting a gun. Margaret didn't flinch. Then he'll learn I don't scare easy. Quote, But the threat lingered like a cloud over the next few weeks. Strange men rode near the boundary lines. Fresh boot prints appeared where no neighbor should be. Twice Margaret chased off men carrying maps and clipboards, their clothes too clean for ranch work. "They're surveying land that isn't there," she said one evening, her anger simmering. "Your father's behind this." Nathaniel knew she was right. He had seen his father take land before, using forged papers, bribed officials, and lies whispered in the right ears. "It won't stop," Nathaniel said. "Not if he thinks he can break us." Margaret stepped closer, her voice steady. "Then we don't break." Their bond grew stronger with every challenge. They worked mornings side by side, checking fences, counting cattle, guarding the land. Every night they returned home together, exhausted but united. Margaret's presence gave Nathaniel a strength he had never known. Her trust in him felt like something sacred. But Edward Whitlock did not back down. One afternoon, a neighbor rode hard across the pasture, dust flying behind him. He dismounted with urgency. "Margaret, Nathaniel, Whitlock filed papers in county court," he warned. "He's claiming 30 acres on your northern line. The part holding your creek." Margaret's face hardened. "The creek is the ranch's heartbeat. Losing that land kills everything." "He's calling your deed invalid," the neighbor added. Nathaniel felt the weight of it hit like a blow. "He'll twist anything if it benefits him." Margaret squared her shoulders. "Then we fight him in court." That evening, by lamplight, they spread out Margaret's deeds across the table. Some pages were old, ink faded, corners worn. But they were legal, signed, sealed, and filed. Her mother's signature appeared on the oldest page, written in a careful hand. "These are solid," Nathaniel said. "If the judge sees them fairly, we win." Margaret lifted her gaze. "And if he's already in your father's pocket?" "Then I testify," Nathaniel said without hesitation. "I know what my father has done." She froze, concern flickering in her eyes. "That means standing against them in public." Quote. Nathaniel's voice was steady. "I have been standing against them my entire life. This time, I won't be alone." The hearing arrived on a hot July morning. Half the county gathered outside the courthouse. People whispered as Margaret and Nathaniel walked in together. Some pitied them, some doubted them. Some silently prayed they would win. Inside, Edward Whitlock sat tall, his daughters on either side. Victoria's stare was cold. Isabel smirked as if the battle was already won. Margaret's back was straight. Nathaniel stood beside her, jaw set. Edward's lawyer moved first, pointing to maps and papers, insisting Margaret's claim was flawed. He spoke loudly, accusing her of stealing land decades ago. When it was Margaret's turn, she stood with calm strength. She spoke of how her mother filed the land, how every mark on every page was earned with sweat and honest work. The courtroom fell so silent one could hear the scratch of the clerk's pen. Then Nathaniel rose. His father's eyes widened in shock. Nathaniel's voice did not shake. He told the court about forged boundaries, neighbors threatened, and deals struck in secret. He revealed the lies his father hoped would stay buried. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The judge leaned forward, listening hard. Victoria's face went pale. Isabel glared daggers. Edward's jaw tightened with rage. When Nathaniel finished, the judge cleared his throat. "The deeds stand," he declared. "Twin Oaks remains in Margaret Doyle's possession. The Whitlock claim is denied." The room erupted in voices, some cheering, some angry. Margaret let out a long breath, the relief washing over her. Nathaniel felt her hand slip into his under the table, strong and warm. Edward stood, his face purple. "You'll regret this, boy," he hissed. Nathaniel replied quietly, "I regret nothing." The danger was not fully gone, but the court ruling broke Edward's power. In the following weeks, the Whitlocks retreated. Their men stopped prowling the land. Their threats faded into bitter silence. The ranch breathed easier. And so did Nathaniel. Life at Twin Oaks settled into a peaceful rhythm. Nathaniel woke each morning beside Margaret, knowing he was where he belonged. They worked together, laughed together, built their ranch together. Some evenings they sat on the porch, watching cattle move across golden fields, her head resting against his shoulder. "You know," Margaret said one night, "your family sent you here as a joke, as an insult." Nathaniel's hand tightened around hers. "I know. But they had no idea," she said softly, turning toward him. "They sent me the only man I ever wanted." He pulled her close, his voice warm. "And you gave me a life I never thought I'd have." The wind rustled the grass. The sky stretched wide and open above them. And for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt whole. The family that discarded him had given him the greatest gift of all: a home, a partner, a love built on truth, and a future worth fighting for.